What's going on, Colts Nation? It's Elijah from Sports Talk Indy, where we cover all things Colts every single day. And if you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate if you subscribe and like if you like what we're doing and join a part of the Sports Talk Indy community. But the Colts have done seemingly something that we're analyzing this report, and it seems that they've signed someone to a $60,000 guaranteed contract, which is not for an undrafted free agent isn't bad at all. But the Colts weren't big spenders during this year's undrafted free agency market. However, one player in particular stands out as the single best player signed. This is a report by Destin Adams over at A to Z Sports, and that player is Craig Young, a linebacker out of Kansas. Goodness, Elijah. Out of Kansas. Now, this name may not ring any bells to a lot of people, and that's totally fine. He spent 3 years at the Ohio State University with 5 tackles in 1 year, 4 tackles in another year, 15 tackles in another year. But then something happened. He switched over to Kansas and got 60 tackles in the next year and 41 tackles in the year after that. He's even gotten one receiving touchdown. He had 4.5 sacks in 2022, 1.5 in 2023, and he set an interception in every single year aside from the first 2 years where he was a backup at Ohio State. Now, that may not sound like a big deal to a lot of people, and that's totally fine because, to be honest, this wasn't a big deal to me. I just saw this name pop up as one of the many people that the Colts signed, and yet it does seem, upon further review, it does seem that the Colts at least have taken a significant interest into Craig Young and what he's doing. The Kansas product is listed at 6'3", 226 pounds with a 33-inch arms. He ran a 4.56 40-yard dash, which is really good for a linebacker and really any defense. That's really good, and added a 37-inch vertical to go along with a 10.8-inch broad jump. Now that all could sound great, but this definitely is interesting. The Colts gave him more money than they gave almost anyone else. We can talk about free agency because they didn't really do much in free agency, really. So if they top him out at $60,000, that's still the third most they spent on anyone not an Indianapolis Colt in free agency. But they gave him a $20,000 signing bonus with $40,000 guaranteed. So that's $60,000. Now this won't guarantee that Young will end up on a roster, but it's something to keep in mind as the offseason progresses and continues to heat up. Young spent 3 seasons at Ohio State and has fouled 2 seasons at Kansas. He recorded 101 tackles, 71 solos, 10.5 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks in 3 passes defended in 25 games at Kansas. Young split time between linebacker and slot during his final year, so he could be a hybrid-type player that the Colts want to look at. Now, I think this is incredibly interesting, especially as you go and you look at this guy's bio. Everything about that screams linebacker, and yet he plays a significant amount of plays at linebacker at the slot and did a pretty decent job at defense. He's also 6'3", 225 pounds, and he's actually from Fort Wayne, Indiana. So, that's a local boy for us. But, yeah, I think this is a pick that the Colts that may have went under the radar, but could add a lot to a linebacker room that really needs as much help as we can get. Aside from you had E.J. Speed, who had a really good year, and then you had Zaire Franklin, who had a record-breaking year. But we lost Shaquille Leonard due to, again, that's still one of the more mysterious drops that I've ever seen of just not knowing why. So we have Zaire Franklin, who had 107 tackles. Excuse me, I lost my place on this. Zaire Franklin had 107 tackles. E.J. Speedo had 76 tackles, and both of them did okay. They did good, but other than that, we don't have a lot of linebackers of note. And there are some people that the Colts drafted that could be really good in linebackers, but other than that, there's not a lot that I would say is a true linebacker. And so this is a room that I think the Colts want to add depth. And they've had really good luck in the past with undrafted free agents. We did a report on this the other day about how the Colts have hit with several undrafted free agents. Kenny Moore being one of the more recent ones. You had Zaire Franklin, who was a 7th-round pick. And so you have all these guys who the Colts are doing really, really well with, so much so that they gave both those guys extensions. Adam Vinatieri was undrafted. We went over this the other day. And so I think that this is a potentially really, really good pick. But this signing is special not only for the Colts, but it's special for Young, who returned to Indiana to compete for a hometown job or for a full-time job in his hometown team. Young grew up in Fort Wayne and attended Wayne High School and was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school and was ranked as the 11th best player in Indiana. So all this to say, I think this is a really good pickup for the Colts in an area of significant need. I mean, we talk about the defense. This entire offseason has been talked about the defense. We need linebackers. We need defensive backs. We need edge rushers. And I think the Colts have done a really good job of not overspending in those areas and yet still getting the guys to fill those needs. Now, I would still love to see them sign a free agent defensive back, whether that's Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams. The list goes on and on of guys who are still available today. Adoree Jackson's still available. All these guys who would add some veteran depth, Stephon Gilmore, to a room that could really use a veteran player. But that being said, even just watching Dallas Flowers play, I mean, I watched some highlights of him today. The dude's actually really, really decent, and I think the Colts are going to be in good shape as far as that goes. But this Craig Young guy, I mean, again, a guy who slid completely under everyone's radar, didn't even get drafted, and was brought in as an undrafted free agent, could be really, really good for the Colts. And could add an area that really is of need. And again, the rest of the league passed him over, and yet now as soon as he signed to a really decent contract as far as like what's available, and who knows, maybe they had to lock him into that $60,000 guaranteed just to get him in the door because he might have been more sought after than we realize. And also, what does it say about Kansas? What does it say about what the Kansas team was doing? Because this is the second or third player drafted from the Jayhawks from last season. You had Bean at quarterback, and now you have Craig Young, who are two guys on opposite ends of the football. And yet it's a weird program to be drafting or to be bringing in undrafted free agents. So I'm curious to see what that's about, to see if there's anything there as far as connections between the Jayhawks and the Colts. It just seems odd. It's Jayhawks you don't usually think of them when it comes in terms of significant players and who you're bringing in on top of that. So I'm very curious to see why that is, and maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe it's just two guys. Maybe one of our scouts or coaches went to a pro day for Kansas and you saw these two guys. But I do think it's really interesting. And again, this is a room that could use a lot of help. I think we went back on the draft on the grades of every position on the NFL, and the Colts are listed as a C for linebackers, even though Zaire Franklin had a record-breaking season. Again, you can't put the entire middle defense on the backs of Zaire Franklin. But I think it's really interesting. I mean, I'm excited to see if this guy works out and if they're going to end up grabbing the next in the long line of undrafted free agents who end up being really, really good. I think it's a fun story. I think it's great. You love to root for the hometown hero. You love to root for the guys coming in and coming back home to the Indianapolis Colts. So yeah, Craig Young, if you're watching this, I hope you have a great career, and I'm excited to watch you play and hope that you make the opening day 53-man roster.